In the heart of an emerald valley, where rivers coiled like silver serpents through the forest, stood the village of Omu-Ala. It was a proud land, known for its red earth fields, its palm wine festivals, and its people who believed that wealth must come from honest sweat, not hidden shrines. But seasons change, and hearts grow restless. When the rains came late one year and the yam barns grew thin, whispers began to stir among the young. Some said the gods had turned away. Others said the spirits of the forest held secrets of gold for anyone brave enough or foolish enough to bargain with them. Among those restless souls was Adana, daughter of Mama Nkem, the palm oil seller whose stall stood by the market gate. Adana was beautiful, the kind of beauty that draws both blessings and envy. Her eyes carried the shimmer of the river after rain. Her laughter rose like flute music, and her walk could silence an entire marketplace. But beauty, my children, is a double-edged gift. When a woman sees her face praised by many tongues, pride can build a nest in her heart. Adana dreamed of silk wrappers and golden bangles. She wanted a husband whose compound had iron gates, whose name opened doors. But the men of Omu-Ala were farmers and hunters, men whose hands bore the marks of toil. To her, they smelled of sweat, not success. She once told her mother, "I was not born to spend my days counting cowries in a dusty stall. The world beyond this forest must surely have better." Mama Nkem, wiping her hands on her wrapper, replied with a heavy heart, "My daughter, wealth that grows faster than yam tubers will rot faster too. What the spirits give quickly, they collect with interest." Adana smiled but did not listen. And that, my children, is how misfortune often enters. On the back of disobedience, wearing the smile of confidence. One night, drums rolled across Omu-Ala. The new moon festival had come. It was the night when maidens danced for fertility and men poured libation to the ancestors. The air smelled of roasted plantain and palm wine. Fireflies circled like living sparks. As Adana danced, her waist beads clinking, the crowd cheered her name. But in the far shadow of the Iroko tree, someone, or something, watched her with glowing eyes. Old Elder Okoro, watching the dancers, raised his cup and declared to the crowd, "May our daughters dance for light, not for shadow." They all laughed, thinking it a simple proverb. Yet the shadow did not laugh. It lingered, whispering her name to the wind. When Adana felt a sudden chill, she turned and saw him. A tall stranger dressed in black, his skin as smooth as river stone, his eyes as deep as the night itself. He smiled, and to her it seemed the drums suddenly slowed. The next day, rumors spread like fire in dry grass. A traveler had entered the village. No one knew where he came from. Some said from the river beyond the hills, others whispered he was from lands where men spoke to snakes and the dead. He called himself Obidi. He was courteous, soft-spoken, and undeniably rich. Gold bangles glinted on his wrists. His hut, newly built by hired men, stood near the forest's edge. He bought the finest goat for his stew, paid double for his palm wine, and carried a scent like the air right before a thunderstorm. Every maiden in the village began to whisper his name, but it was Adana who caught his eye. He found her by the market, his voice smooth and captivating. "When I saw you dance," he said, "the moon forgot its duty. You, Adana, are a queen hidden among farmers." Adana, feeling her heart flutter, replied, "And you speak like one who has known queens before." He laughed, a sound that was both warm and strangely cold. "Perhaps I have," he said. From that day on, they walked together. He spoke of vast kingdoms beyond the hills, of a power that could bend fortune, of ancient rituals older than memory itself. One evening, as the sun set, he looked at her intently and asked, "The earth listens to those who dare. Do you dare, Adana?" She nodded, her eyes wide with dreams, and in that moment, fate took note. But not all were blind to the strangeness of it all. Elder Okoro, the oldest man in Omu'ala, saw the darkness gathering like storm clouds. He called Adana one afternoon as she passed beneath the Udala tree. "Child," he said, his voice raspy with age, "there is something in that man's shadow that has no feet. When he walks, the ground sighs. I have seen such things before, in the days of my father's father. The spirits love to borrow human form when they wish to test our greed." Adana, however, was defiant. "Elder," she replied, her voice sharp, "you judge a good man simply because he is rich? Should poverty be our only blessing?" The old man shook his head slowly. "Better a hut built by clean hands than a mansion built on bones." But the young rarely believe the old until the drums of trouble begin to beat. Obidi began to shower Adana's family with gifts, bolts of cloth from distant markets, baskets filled with cowries, and gourds of the finest palm oil. The villagers whispered that he must be the son of a great chief. Even Mama Inkim, though still uneasy, began to soften. "He has been so kind to us," she mused. "Perhaps the spirits sent him to wipe away our tears." Elder Okoro, overhearing her, muttered to himself, "Spirits do not wipe tears, they collect them." Soon, Obidi asked for Adana's hand in marriage. The village elders hesitated, for no one knew his lineage or his people, but he offered so many gifts, goats, yams, and cowries, that their doubts melted like butter on hot yam. The wedding date was fixed, yet he made one strange request. "Our marriage must happen not in the market square," he announced, "but deep within the forest, by the river. It is a ritual of my people. It will bind our souls together forever." The elders protested this break with tradition, but Adana, lost in her vision of a grand future, insisted. "Love knows no boundary," she declared. And so the village began preparations for a wedding unlike any they had ever seen. The night before the ceremony, Mama Nkem could not sleep. A terrible dream had come to her. She saw her daughter Adana standing by the river, surrounded by countless snakes. Their tongues flicked like tiny flames. Terrified, she rushed to Elder Okoro's hut in the dead of night. "Old one," she cried, "I fear the river spirits have claimed my child." The elder listened patiently, his face grim. "Then we must watch the wedding from afar," he said. "If what you saw in your dream is true, the night itself will reveal it." When the moon rose full and white in the sky, the wedding procession began. Adana wore a wrapper of crimson silk and a crown of cowries. Her eyes glittered with triumph. The villagers followed with drums and songs, though an unspoken fear lurked beneath their rhythm. The path wound deeper and deeper into the forest, where the air grew cold and fireflies danced like wandering spirits. Obidi walked ahead, carrying a staff carved with coiling serpent symbols. And if anyone had looked closely, they would have seen that the ground left no footprints beneath his feet. At last, they reached the riverbank, a wide, dark, and whispering expanse of water. There, candles burned with an unnatural stillness, their flames untouched by the breeze. The air was heavy, silent. The drumming stopped. The wedding was about to begin. The river waited, whispering its secrets into the night. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales from around the world. We'll see you in the next one. Ah, my children, gather round and listen closely. The river, you see, is a patient listener. It remembers every secret told in arrogance, every promise whispered in greed. And tonight's story begins with such a promise on the banks of a river that holds ancient truths. Our tale is about a man named Obidi and a woman named Adana. The night was meant for celebration, a wedding under the watchful eye of the moon. Obidi, a man of mystery and immense charm, turned to the crowd gathered on the riverbank. His voice was smooth, yet carried an unsettling authority. "This river is sacred," he declared. "Only those of pure heart may stand witness. Let the elders and mothers step back. The bride will walk with me into the water, for our bond must be sealed in its depths." A murmur went through the crowd. The drummers, who had been beating a rhythm of joy, hesitated. Their hands suddenly felt heavy. Elder Okoro, a man whose eyes had seen many seasons, felt a cold wind brush his cheek, a wind that seemed to come from the river itself. He whispered to himself, "The spirits are restless." But Adana, our bride, she heard nothing but the sweet song of her ambition. Blinded by her love for Obedi, and even more so by her greed for the wealth he promised, she followed him without a second thought. She stepped away from the warmth of the village fires, away from the safety of her people, and followed Obedi into the river's waiting mist. And that, my children, is where the night began to show its true face. For in the river's heart sleeps a truth that no mortal should ever awaken. What happened next would turn joy into ashes, and a promise of love into a chilling legend. The crowd stood on the bank, a sea of worried faces, watching as Adana and Obedi waded deeper into the moonlit water. The mist curled around their ankles, then their waists, like white smoke from a spirit's fire. At first, all seemed peaceful. You could hear the soft sound of ripples against the shore, the low hum of night insects, and see the moon's reflection trembling on the dark surface. It was a beautiful, serene picture. But then, a strange feeling crept over the drummers. Their hands grew cold, their fingers stiff. One of them leaned to his companion and whispered, his voice shaking, "Why does the water not touch his clothes?" And he was right. Elder Okoro, who had moved to the edge of the trees for a better view, clutched his old walking stick tighter. The water should have been up to Obedi's chest by now, lapping at his shoulders. Yet he walked as if he was on solid ground, as if the water itself was afraid to touch him. Adana, however, saw none of this. She was smiling, her face alight with pride. Her eyes were fixed on the golden future she saw, a dream of wealth beyond imagination. Obedi stopped in the middle of the river, the mist swirling thickly around him, and turned to her. His voice echoed strangely over the water. "Adana," he said, "repeat after me. I marry not a man, but power itself." Without hesitation, her voice clear and eager, Adana repeated, "I marry not a man, but power itself." As the words left her lips, the river stirred. A ripple, larger than any before, spread out from where they stood. Obedi's eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. "Say again," he commanded, "may my soul belong to what grants me wealth." And Adana, lost in her desire, obeyed. "May my soul belong to what grants me wealth." The moment she spoke, the mist around them darkened, turning from white to a sickly gray. From beneath the surface, bubbles began to rise, not small and gentle, but large and furious, like a pot of water boiling over a fire. The drummers stopped playing altogether. A heavy, fearful silence fell over the crowd. Elder Okoro's voice trembled from the shadows. "Ancestors, cover your ears. The girl binds herself to a shadow." From the very heart of the river, a hiss began. It was soft at first, like a snake in the grass. But it grew and grew until it was louder than a crash of thunder, a sound that shook the very ground. The water in front of them split apart, boiling and churning, and from its depths a monstrous serpent emerged. It was black as oil, its massive scales glistening in the moonlight, and its eyes were two pits of fire, glowing with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. Its forked tongue flicked out, tasting the fear in the air. The villagers screamed. A wave of panic washed over them, and they fled, scattering their ceremonial calabashes and torches, stumbling over each other in their haste to escape. But Adana stood frozen, her hands still locked in Obidi's grasp. Before her horrified eyes, a terrible transformation began. Obidi's skin started to shimmer and peel away like a snake shedding its skin. His arms elongated, his fingers fused together. His handsome face twisted and stretched into a long, scaly snout. The gold bangles on his wrists, the very symbols of the wealth she craved, melted like wax and reformed into gleaming scales. Adana's voice was a choked whisper of terror. "Obidi, what is happening to you?" The creature that was once Obidi turned its fiery eyes upon her. The voice that came out was no longer human, but a sibilant hiss that seemed to slither into her ears. "You asked for power, and power answers." The giant serpent coiled its immense body around her waist, not crushing her but binding her to it. With one final terrifying hiss, it pulled her down, and the dark river swallowed them whole. The waters closed over their heads, the bubbles ceased, and an unnatural silence fell upon Omu'ala. When morning came, the river was calm again, its surface smooth and mirror-like, pretending innocence. It was as if the horrors of the night had been just a dream. The villagers, brave enough to return in the light of day, searched the banks, calling Adana's name, but they found nothing. Nothing except a single piece of her red wedding wrapper floating near the reeds, a silent testament to the night's tragedy. Adana's mother, Mama Nkem, wept until her eyes were swollen and red. Her heart shattered. She fell to her knees at the water's edge, her cries echoing through the quiet morning. "She was my only child. Spirits of the river, return her to me. Please return my daughter." But only the quiet lapping of the water answered. Elder Okoro stood beside her, his face a mask of solemn grief. "When a woman marries the shadow," he said, his voice heavy with ancient knowledge, "her footsteps vanish with the dawn. But the story does not end here. Evil is never satisfied. It always asks for more." And he was right. The wedding was over, but the terror had just begun. In the days that followed, strange things began happening in the village of Omu'ala. The cows, once content to drink from the river, would now approach the bank and then back away, lowing in distress. The children, playing near the water, would run home with wide, frightened eyes, whispering that they heard Adana's voice calling to them from beneath the surface. Traders who had to cross the bridge over the river would shiver, feeling unseen eyes watching them from the murky depths below. The river was no longer a source of life for the village. It had become a place of fear. Then, on the seventh night, the curse showed its true power. The moon hung full in the sky, but it was a terrifying, unnatural red, like the color of spilled blood. And from the riverbank, a soft singing began to drift into the village. It was a beautiful, haunting melody, and the voice was unmistakable. It was Adana's. The story was far from over. Thank you so much for watching. If you were captivated by this tale of folklore and mystery, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you do not miss the next part of this chilling legend. What do you think happens next? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe and see you in the next story. Adana. Oh, Adana. Her name had become a soft, sorrowful whisper on the wind after she was swept away by the river's fierce current. For 7 long years, her mother, Mama Nkem, mourned. She would sit by the riverbank, her heart a hollow drum, calling out to the waters that had stolen her only child. The village of Omu'ala mourned with her, but as seasons turned, hope faded into a distant memory, like a half-forgotten song. Then, one night, under the silver gaze of a full moon, a voice as smooth and cool as river stones cut through the quiet. "Mother, open your door. I have returned with the blessings of the deep." Mama Nkem's heart leaped into her throat. Could it be? She ran out, her wrapper half-tied, stumbling in her haste. And there she was, Adana, standing in the moonlight, more beautiful than ever, wearing silk finer than any cloth the villagers had ever seen. Around her neck hung jewels that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly green light. A joyous cry erupted from the villagers who had gathered. "The gods have returned her!" they shouted, their voices thick with disbelief and celebration. They danced, they sang, they praised the ancestors. But amid the revelry, one man stood apart. Elder Okoro, his face a roadmap of ancient wisdom, watched with eyes that saw more than just a miracle. His gaze darkened as he noticed something deeply unsettling. When Adana moved, her shadow lingered, following a fraction of a second later, as if it had a mind of its own. Pulling Mama Nkem aside, his voice was a low, urgent whisper. "Be warned. Keep her away from the river for 7 days. 7 suns, 7 moons. Do not let her go near the water's edge. If she steps near it, you will lose her again, and this time, forever." Mama Nkem, her mind clouded with the sheer joy of her daughter's return, nodded quickly, promising to heed his words. But as she agreed, Adana, who seemed to hear the whisper from across the compound, turned her head. A strange, knowing smile played on her lips, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a smile that held the secrets of the deep, dark water. In the days that followed, the story of Adana's return was just the beginning. Soon, her family's humble compound transformed into the richest in all of Omu Ala. It was a prosperity that defied logic. Traders from distant lands, drawn by an unseen force, brought their finest goods directly to her door, bypassing the village market. Palm oil pots, once carefully rationed, now multiplied overnight, always full to the brim without anyone refilling them. Each morning, a calabash in her room would be overflowing with gold cowries, shimmering as if freshly plucked from a treasure chest. Adana's influence grew with her wealth. Even the village chief, a man of great pride and power, began to visit her, seeking her counsel on matters of trade and prosperity. He would sit before her, listening intently as she spoke of fortunes and futures. The people of Omu Ala watched in a mixture of awe and envy. Whispers followed her like her own detached shadow. Some said she was favored by Mami Wata, the powerful spirit of the river. Others believed she hadn't just returned from the dead, but had become a goddess herself. But in their awe, they missed the subtle changes, the chilling details. They didn't notice how her laughter, once light and carefree, now carried a faint, unsettling echo, like another voice laughing softly just beneath hers. They didn't see the look in her eyes when she stared towards the river, a look of longing and belonging. At night, when the village was wrapped in sleep, a few early risers or restless souls swore they saw a shadow slip from her hut. It wasn't a human shadow. It was long, serpentine, and it didn't walk, but glided silently over the ground, always moving in one direction, toward the river. The miracle of Adana was beginning to feel less like a blessing and more like a bargain with forces unknown. The wealth was undeniable, but a cold unease was slowly seeping into the heart of Omu Ala. The 7 days Elder Okoro had warned of were approaching, and the river seemed to be calling, its gentle lapping a patient, insistent summons. Adana's strange, knowing smile was seen more often, and her connection to the water felt stronger than her connection to the land she walked on. The village was getting richer, but it felt like they were losing Adana all over again. Not to the water, but to the darkness she brought back with her. Then, the price of this unnatural prosperity began to reveal itself. One morning, Mama Nkem, the very woman whose prayers had seemingly been answered, fell gravely ill. It wasn't a common sickness. A deep, penetrating cold settled into her bones, a chill that no blanket or fire could warm. Her skin grew pale, and her breath became shallow. The village healer tried every herb, every poultice, every incantation known to him, but nothing worked. It was as if her life force was being drained away by an invisible siphon. Adana, now draped in fabrics so fine they looked like woven moonlight and wearing jewels that seemed to steal the light from the room, grew desperate. She had wealth, she had influence, but she was powerless to save her own mother. That night, she closed the door to her lavish hut and called out into the darkness, not to the ancestors, but to the other presence in her life. The spirit who came to her in dreams, a handsome, powerful entity who called himself Obidi, her husband from the deep. "Great One," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "My husband, my king from the water. Heal my mother. You know her heart. She was kind to you. She welcomed me back without question." For a moment there was only silence. Then a voice answered, not from any one place, but from everywhere at once. It echoed in the room, cold and vast like the bottom of the ocean. It was Obidi's voice, but stripped of all warmth. "Power has no kindness," it boomed. "Every gift must be repaid. The bond between our worlds must be sealed. Your mother's soul will be the seal." A sob tore from Adana's throat. The beautiful dream had become a waking nightmare. The love she thought she had found was a predatory contract. "Please," she wept, her body shaking. "Not her! Take my wealth, take my status, take anything else, but please, not her!" The echoing voice replied, its tone final and absolute. "The price is set. Her life for your power, her spirit for our union. It is the only way." Adana collapsed, the weight of her terrible bargain crushing her. She had gained a kingdom but was about to lose the one person she had done it all for. The blessings of the deep had revealed their true, monstrous cost. Thank you so much for joining me for this story today. If you enjoy tales of folklore and mysteries from around the world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next adventure. We'd love to have you in our community. Until next time, stay curious. But the next morning, Mama Nkem's mat was empty. Her hut smelled of river water. Adana's tears fell onto the floor, hissing as if they landed on fire. And from that day forward, she stopped weeping. A cold resolve settled in her heart. She painted her eyes black with coal, wore heavy jewels even as she slept, and never, ever smiled again. Time passed, and Adana's wealth spread like wild vines, choking the other homes in the village. She was no longer the desperate girl by the river. She was a queen in her own right. She built magnificent shrines to forgotten gods, gave out lavish gifts of cloth and coin, and hired drummers to play day and night, a constant pounding rhythm that filled the air with her glory. Yet, as her fortune grew, her heart grew hollow. Strange changes began to overtake her. She found she could not bear the bright sunlight for long. Her skin, once smooth, would burn and blister easily. She stopped eating food cooked on fire, claiming the smoke irritated her. Instead, she developed a taste for raw fish, freshly caught from the river, its silvery scales still glistening. And then there were the disappearances. Every full moon, without fail, Adana would vanish for hours. No servant knew where she went. No guard could track her. One night, driven by a growing unease, Elder Okoro decided to follow her. He was the oldest man in the village, his eyes having seen seasons of both feast and famine. Keeping to the deepest shadows, his bare feet silent on the cool earth, he trailed her down the familiar path to the river. He saw her kneel at the water's edge, her silhouette a dark shape against the moonlit surface. She wasn't praying. She was whispering, her voice a low hum, speaking in a language older than words, a tongue of hissing sounds and deep gutturals that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Then the water began to churn. From the dark depths, the serpent rose again. But it was different now, larger, more fearsome, its head crowned with shimmering river shells that caught the moonlight like 1,000 tiny eyes. It didn't threaten her. Instead, it coiled around her waist, its massive body surprisingly gentle. And together they swayed by the riverbank. a grotesque dance of lovers under the full moon. Hiding behind a large baobab tree, Elder Okoro trembled, his hand clamped over his mouth to stifle a gasp. He whispered to the spirits of his ancestors, "The river owns her completely. Her marriage was not to a man or a spirit, but to hunger itself." He crept back to the village that night, his heart heavy with a terrible secret. He told the chief what he had seen, but fear had already taken root in their hearts, silencing them. How could they challenge a woman whose wealth now fed half the village? Who would dare risk their own prosperity to confront the source of it? Greed, my children, is contagious. When the villagers saw Adana's endless riches, they began to wonder. If the river had blessed her, why not them? Soon they started to copy her ways. Secretly, under the cover of darkness, they crept to the river. They threw in their own offerings, goats, precious beads, some even cut locks of their own hair, hoping to catch the attention of the river's power. They craved a fraction of Adana's fortune. But the river did not grant them wealth. Instead, it grew darker, its waters turning murky and foul. The fish, once plentiful, began to wash ashore, their bodies pale and lifeless. A strange sickness swept through the village. Children were born weak and cried through the night. The drums, once a sound of joy and celebration, lost their spirit and beat a mournful, hollow tune. The land itself seemed to be dying. The elders gathered in the chief's hut, their faces etched with desperation. Chief Ozo, his voice strained, spoke first. "The spirits are angry. Our ancestors have turned their backs on us. We must cleanse this land." Elder Okoro, his gaze steady, shook his head. "This is not the anger of our ancestors. The curse came from one woman's marriage. Until her bond with the river is broken, our village Omu'ala will continue to suffer." They knew he was right. They had to confront Adana. But confronting a woman who walks with spirits, who dances with a serpent god, is no small thing. It was a task that could cost them their lives. They found her in the courtyard of her grand compound, surrounded by servants fanning her and offering her cool drinks. She looked almost inhuman now. Her eyes, once dark and deep, now glowed with a faint, pale light, and her tongue flicked nervously when she spoke, like a snake tasting the air. Chief Ozo stepped forward, his voice trembling but firm. "Adana, the river rejects our offerings. The fish are dead, our children are weak, our land dies. Release whatever it is that binds you." Adana looked at him, and a cold, thin smile touched her lips. It did not reach her glowing eyes. "You begged for prosperity," she hissed, her voice smooth as polished stone. "Did I not bring it to you? You feast from my hand. The earth always takes its share. That is the nature of balance." "No," Elder Okoro's voice boomed, cutting through the tense air. He stepped past the chief, his wooden staff held before him like a spear. "What you serve is not balance. It is hunger, wearing a mask of gold." At his words, the very air changed. A low hum vibrated through the ground, and the earth beneath their feet trembled. From the shadows all around them, a voice hissed, seeming to come from everywhere at once. It was a sound of ancient power and cold fury. "Who dares speak against the wife of the deep?" Fear, stark and absolute, swept through the delegation. Chickens in the courtyard clucked wildly and scattered. The sky, once clear, darkened as if a storm was gathering in an instant. The elders, brave men all their lives, turned and fled, their courage broken by that unearthly voice, all except for Okoro. He stood his ground, raising his ancestral staff high above his head. He chanted, his voice ringing with the power of generations. "By the name of the ancestors, I bind your darkness. You shall not feed upon our children." A brilliant flash of lightning split the sky, striking the ground near Adana's feet. She screamed, a raw, agonizing sound, and clutched her head. For a fleeting moment, A massive, shadowy serpent form peeled away from her body, writhing in anger and pain. Then, as quickly as it appeared, both Adana and the shadow vanished into a swirling mist. After that night, Adana was never seen again. Her grand compound, once the heart of the village, crumbled into ruin overnight. Her fabulous wealth, the silks and gold and jewels, turned to dust and blew away on the wind. The river itself receded, leaving behind a wasteland of cracked, dry earth where fish once swam. The prosperity she had brought was gone, and it had taken the life of the river with it. But even now the story doesn't truly end there. Sometimes, during the heavy rains when the storms lash the village, the old folks swear they can hear a voice echoing on the wind. It's a woman's voice, filled with cold laughter and a chilling warning. Power is a snake. It coils around the greedy and calls it love. Ah, but you think it ended there? No. Evil never sleeps after just one victory. It waits, coiled in silence. And when the moon turns red again, the river remembers, and it hungers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the shadows.